All right, clock on the pew says it'd be about that time, so we'll go ahead and get ready to get started. Is it warm enough for everybody? A little toasty, gonna get a little toastier the next couple of days apparently. So, prayer list, and I have notes from Barbara. Linda Winstead, surgery is set for August 23rd. So August 23rd, healing going to be a little bit difficult, more difficult because of her lymphoderma in her arm, but that surgery is scheduled for August 23rd. Michael Scott is at home with a chest tube. A biopsy report scheduled this week. I think the inclination is they think it could be cancer. So, anybody else? Okay, so Billy's home, but still got another surgery to deal with. He's going to get the frequent flyer miles with them, isn't he? Anything else? If you would, Stacy and I are traveling beginning late Thursday night. We are headed to Boston, Massachusetts, and we'll be gone for about 5-6 days. This is our train ride trip, so we will be trekking through several states. I guess, again, keep those in your mind, prayers, thoughts and prayers that do not have air conditioning. Next 2 days are going to be really, really tough. So if you know of people around you that don't, sort of keep an eye on them and check in on them, because it is going to be hot, hot, hot. Oh, yes, indeed. Especially in your household. So, I guess they all survived the heat and all up there, didn't they? Oh, that's right, you were there too. Well, good. So that was in what, Allen County? South of Bowling Green, isn't it? Okay. You program it in the GPS and just follow where Siri tells you to go. Anything else? Anything? If not, all right, if you'll bow with me, we'll get started with a prayer and get into class. Father, we come this morning thanking you for this beautiful sunshiny morning that we have to come together to worship you, to sing praises to you, to study from your word. Father, we come so thankfully this morning, thanking you for the blessings of life that you have bestowed upon us physically and spiritually. Most of all, Father, as we come into your presence this morning, we want to thank you for that gift of your Son that was given up on our behalf, so we have hope of that restoration of that relationship with you. Father, also this morning we come to you with prayers of petition for those who have been dealing with injury and difficulties, and we ask that you continue to be with those who are getting care provided to them and those providing the care, and help them to make progress along the way. Father, we also know that those around us who are dealing with the loss of loved ones, we ask that you would continue to be with them, especially the family of Zach as they deal with the loss of that young man in the days and the weeks ahead. Father, also as we come into your presence, we come humbly seeking forgiveness the times that we fail you. Times, Father, we do things we know we should not do, but in our human fleshly ways, we still find ways to do them in contradiction to your will. Father, also we ask forgiveness for the times that there are things we know we should do to further your cause and that we fail to make the progress in the ways that you would have us to do. Father, now as classes begin here across the campus, we ask that you would help open our hearts, our minds to to the things that we're going to look at in your word. Help us take them and apply them to our lives, that we may walk closer in accordance with your will and get closer in our knowledge of you. Father, as always, we come into your presence this morning asking these things and many more in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. All right, we are rolling on through our To the Point. Look at the Gospel of Mark. Freddie Farmer will be taking class next week. He will go on something that he will prepare, and then we will get back into where we are in a couple of weeks. So we are continuing, and we are now at Mark chapter 7, beginning at verse 14. We're going to try to get through the rest of chapter 7 and get into chapter 8 today. But we're going to look, first of all, at the issue of clean and unclean. And let's look at verses 14 through 23. Verses 14 through 23. It says, summoning the crowd again, he told them, listen to me, all of you, and understand. Nothing that goes into a person from outside can defile him, but the things that come out of a person are what defile him. When he went into the house away from the crowd, his disciples asked him about the parable. He said to them, are you also as lacking in understanding? Don't you realize that nothing going into a person from the outside can defile him? For it doesn't go into his heart, but into the stomach and is eliminated. Thus he declared all foods clean. And he said, what comes out of a person is what defiles him. For from within, out of people's hearts, come evil thoughts, sexual immoralities, thefts, murders, adulteries, greed, evil actions, deceit, self-indulgence, envy, slander, pride, and foolishness. All of these evil things come from within and defile a person. So, for those of us who enjoy barbecue, this has to be one of our favorite scriptures in the Bible. Because Jesus says everything's good. Here you can eat pig now. So if we like barbecue, this is going to have to be one of your favorite sections. All food is good. What defiles? What do you think of when you hear the term defile? What do you think of when we defile? Do we use this term like they did then? Or do we even, is this a word in our verbiage today, in our language today, we really don't use a lot. I don't think we really use this word a lot in commonality discussion unless we're discussing biblical issues and we're talking about texts like this where we talk about defiling. But it's not really a term that we use a lot. We might use something like sullied or dirtied or other things, but we really don't use defiled a whole lot. So Jesus is talking here, and he's specifically beginning talking about what you eat. And can you imagine the reaction of some of those religious leaders who happen to be there, some of those who've never heard Jesus before, and the things he says here probably leaves them looking at it going like, what? Because what have they heard for centuries about certain foods? What have they heard about certain foods? Like pork. Can't have it. And if you ate it or touch it, you become defiled. You become dirty. You have to go through cleansing. You can go through the list of things that you could not eat based on the design of the animals. So they had long heard for centuries, you can't eat this, you can't eat this, you can't eat that, you can't eat that, no to that, no to that, no to that. And what Jesus says right here is, hey, it's food. That's essentially what he's getting down to right here is, hey, it's food. It's food. Think about what we just read. Jesus tells them, it's not what you take in. What you eat doesn't impact you. People were more worried about eating the wrong thing than where their heart was. This is what we get down to the problem here. They were more worried about, I can't eat that. If I touch that or I take a bite of that, that's going to make me, it's going to defile me, and I'm unclean. I can't go to temple. I can't pray. I can't worship just because of what they take in. They're more worried about that than exhibiting any kind of love or compassion for their fellow man. Again, it gets into this issue of legalistic. I'm more worried about, I can't do that, so I'm going to stay over here. No compassion, but they were more worried about eating the wrong thing than where their heart was. I can hate my brother, but I'm not going to eat the pig. We talked last week about how some of the religious leaders had taken and twisted the thing about supporting your parents and your gift for God. Well, I've got this money, I'm going to give it to God, so I can't help mom and dad. And Jesus has pointed out to them, no, you're actually twisting and going against what the law was intended to do. So here they're worrying about the wrong thing. They're more worried about what they're going to eat for supper than maybe feeding someone who's hungry. And Jesus says, oh, stop a minute. Stop. Let's hold up a minute here. Jesus says, hold on. Hold on. He points out that it's not what you eat that matters. Rather, what is most important is what comes out of your heart. Now, to us today, this seems like a little thing, doesn't it? Well, of course, it should be okay to eat foods. Your doctor is going to tell you certain foods are not the best for you. Anybody ever get that discussion? Don't eat this, eat less of that, do whatever. But otherwise, it's not spiritually wrong to consume pork. It's not what you eat that matters, it's what comes out of your heart. And these people had lost track of that. They were more concerned about cleanliness and uncleanliness, not love and compassion. Look at verse 21. For from within, out of people's hearts come evil thoughts, sexual immoralities, thefts, murders, adulterers, greed, evil actions, deceit, self-indulgence, although food can come in with that, so envy, slander, pride, and foolishness. All these evil things come from within and defile a person. Nobody's committed these acts just because they had a pork sandwich. We might have had this little issue because of what we eat, but that's not necessarily what we eat. It's overdoing it. Maybe too many trips through the buffet, we get self-indulgent. But it's from within. Nothing you put in defiles you. Now, let's qualify this statement here. There are things, and let's step away. We're not talking about food here, but there are things that you can put into your body that will influence your heart and may direct you in other directions. But by themselves, they do not defile you. What you take with some of the things you read, some of the music you listen to, other things you do, taking it in is not what defiles you. What you do with it and how it influences your actions then defile you. So we need to be careful what we take in, but remember this is not what we take in that does it. It's our heart and our spirit that does it. The things that we take in can influence us. One writer said, our problems are heart problems. Our problems are not external, but internal. The issue is not outside of yourself, but inside yourself. The issue is not everyone else. Pause on that part a minute. The issue is not, hear this, the issue is not everyone else. The issue is us. The issue is you. Our sin issues are not because our spouses, our friends, our parents, our children, our coworkers, our employers, or anyone else. Our sin issues are inside of us. Ever heard someone who blames everyone else for the situations they find themselves in? Well, it was because of this, then that was because of that. And there are influences. Your past can influence you, but ultimately each one of us is accountable for the things that we do. We may have been influenced by any number of this list, but they didn't make us do it. The old adage that Flip Wilson had when he was on TV, some of you younger ones in here may not remember it, a lot of us will. The devil made me do it. No, not actually. The devil put it out there, tempted you, and made it available to you, but he didn't make you do it. Who makes us sin? Ourselves. Nobody, nothing else. It stops and ends with us. It's a heart problem. We control where our heart stands. Not your mom, not your dad, not your kids, not your grandkids. Your grandkids may influence your heart and direct some things you do, but it stops with us. It starts with us and it finishes with us. It's our heart that determines what comes out of us and whether or not that defiles us. What we need is a change of heart. And that's the point that Jesus is trying to drive home here, is it doesn't matter what you eat. Yeah, you might want to change your diet sometimes and eat a little better and maybe lose a little weight. But it's not what we consume that affects what comes out of our heart. We need to change our heart. True holiness is internal and not external. And so here's the problem that the Pharisees and the scribes all had at this time. They thought by presenting this image, they thought by doing things that were visible and living to the letter of the law that they were holy. They were missing out because inside their hearts hadn't changed. It's not about what you show on the outside. Yes, you want to show positive and you want to be a good reflection of the one who's supposed to be filling you on the inside, but it's not what's on the outside that determines where your spirit is. It's your heart. The Pharisees and the Sadducees and the scribes were trying to do their checklist and not eating these foods they thought was one of the items on their checklist. And they thought they could stay clean by following the checklist and not eating unclean foods. And so Jesus here has really turned part of their world upside down. Of course, as we see all throughout his ministry, what ends up getting Jesus crucified is he's turned their religious world upside down. And he's doing so here by saying, it doesn't matter what you eat. What you eat doesn't make you better or worse. It's what comes out of your heart. So he's hitting them again with something big. This is what the religious leaders of Jesus' day did not see. They didn't see that it was a matter of the heart. They thought it was a matter of adhering to the very, very letter of the law. And as we talked about a week or so ago, it was part of the problem was they had added so much man-made stuff. They were far off of what God intended. Writer said, stating that following Jesus is simply stopping sins presents the completely wrong focus. We can try to stop all the externals of sin and still be completely lost before God because we have not changed the heart nor have been seeking a relationship with God. Think about that a minute. Can you be giving the appearance to others that you are living a life? Can you go to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, be at every Bible class, be at every Bible study, be at every fellowship meal, but still not get it? Think about it. The Pharisees, the scribes, they spent all day at the temple. They were there all the time. All they did was look at the law. They thought they were doing and presenting the image of what they ought to do, but they didn't get it. And I think oftentimes there are a lot of Christians today who do their Bible reading, they spend their time in prayer. They're here every time the church has the doors open, but they miss it because they have a heart issue. Because they don't have love and compassion for others. They don't have understanding for others. And they're missing out on the relationship with God. Jesus told his followers, this is how they will know that you love me, or this is how they will know you are mine, and that was by what? Loving each other. No outward act can fix the heart. Each of the sins that Jesus lists is a problem of the heart, not something else. This is why telling people to stop sinning is an insufficient and non-biblical answer. Stopping sin that is not rooted in knowing the love and grace of God is going to fail. Look at somebody, don't sin. Well, we're all sinners. The Bible tells us we're all sinners, and that we all are going to continue to sin. We're never going to be perfect. We strive to be better. But telling somebody to stop sin without having a change of their heart is not going to be successful. There is a difference between stopping sinning and treasuring those things that are good. Can you strive to cut the bad things out of your life and not sin, not commit violations of God's law, but still not appreciate the love, the grace, and the mercy of God? There is a difference between just trying to stop sinning and then treasuring those things that are good, like love, grace, mercy, compassion. Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Truth, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable. Doesn't say anything there about don't eat pork, does it? It doesn't say anything about put a box of Bible verses on your forehead. It doesn't say a lot of things, the legalistic things that the religious leaders of Jesus' day were getting caught up in. It says focus on these things. Change your heart. And it's not what you eat that defiles you. All right, we're going to go on now. Mark 7, beginning of verse 24. We're going to look at released. And we're going to start with the test of faith as we look at beginning of verse 24 and go to verse 30. Verse 24 says, he got up and departed from there to the region of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know it, but he could not escape notice. Instead, immediately after hearing about him, a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit came and fell at his feet. The woman was a Gentile, a Syrophoenician by birth, and she was asking him to cast the demon out of her daughter. He said to her, let the children be fed first, because it isn't right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. But she replied to him, Lord, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. Then he told her, because of this reply, you may go. The demon has left your daughter. When she went back to her home, she found her child lying on the bed, and the demon was gone. A lot of things in this stretch here. Just a lot of things. Some things that sound a little difficult until you look at them maybe in the right perspective. So, Jesus is traveling now in this area right up here. Here's Tyre. Now, if you look at this map, what's one thing you notice about Tyre? There you go. It's outside the boundaries of Israel at this point. He's in Gentile territory. He's in Gentile territory. In 1 Kings 17, Elijah went to the widow of Zarephath in this area. 2 Kings 4, Elisha encounters a Shunammite woman, and her test of faith was given to her, and Elisha raises her son from the dead in this area. But again, note this is outside the boundaries of Israel. So, first of all, why is Jesus trying not to let it be known that he is there? Doesn't he want to teach as many people? Doesn't he want to see as many people, convey about who he is to as many people? Now, remember back a little bit. What were Jesus and the disciples at one point trying to do for a little bit? They were trying to get away and get a little bit of rest. So I think maybe part of the reason he's trying to get away here is they physically, human body needs a little break. So I think maybe the reason he's trying not to let anybody know he's there, he needs some downtime. You ever got to the point you need a little downtime? Ever got to that point you need to go sit somewhere quiet? Just get away from people. So I think maybe Jesus was trying to get a little away for a little bit. But as we've seen how many times now through the Gospel of Mark, every time they try to get away for a little bit and somebody finds out he's there goes the peace and quiet in the neighborhood. Doesn't take long for word to spread about Jesus. Even in Gentile territory here, the word spreads. Now, the woman comes and falls at the feet of Jesus asking for help for her daughter. She heard about Jesus. What's interesting about this, she has heard about Jesus. And she's a Gentile woman, and she's apparently got enough faith. She's going to Jesus here, asking for help for her daughter. But Jesus' response here, and he said to her, let the children be fed first, because it isn't right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. Say what? Does this, if you don't look at this carefully and you don't look at this into it, how does this verse sound back here? How does that sound if you don't understand what you're looking at? And there may be people who want to belittle Christianity and belittle the faith will look at this and say, he didn't talk to that woman very nice. But how does that sound? Sounds a little lack of compassionate, doesn't it? When he says, and throw it to the dogs. Now, as you look at this verse, one thing we need to talk about here. There is a different word in the original language for dogs here that does not imply this is just any old dog we're talking about. This is not like taking scraps, tossing them out to the wild dogs who are rounding the streets, just, not cared for, nothing. They're just wild and they run. That's not the kind of dog in the original language this refers to here. Do you know what kind of dog this refers to? If anybody's seen my pictures with Teddy, you know that we're talking about this. The language here is talking about a dog that was considered a family pet. First of all, it's not just a mutt dog running the street or a wild dog or something like that. It's talking about a pet that a family would, it's talking about a dog that a family would have like a pet. Now, still that's not, you're still looking at this, whoa, if you're not careful. If you're not careful how you look at it, it comes off very much lacking in compassion. The message is that the king and the kingdom will come to Israel first. The king comes to Israel first. That's the children referred to in this parable. It's also important here when you look at this story, Jesus does not say what? He doesn't tell her no. He doesn't even tell her, go on, I will do this sometime in the future, but I have to deal with this other now. But it's also important that Jesus does not say no. It's also important, does the woman take offense at what he says? Is she offended by the statement he makes? No. This woman gives you the impression she was pretty understanding, knowledgeable, because she didn't take offense at being called a dog, because she understood that Jesus had come first for the people of Israel. But she also recognizes, as she says, even the dogs of the house get what the children drop. Ever let your dog into the kitchen just to clean up the floor? The other day, the boys had been over and some Cheetos were spilled on the floor. Stacy goes, go get Teddy. Brought Teddy up to the kitchen. He goes through, floor's clean, a couple of seconds. But she understood that scraps from the king's table were better than nothing. But I think also Jesus is in a teaching moment too here, that it's not going to just be for the children of Israel, it's going to come to all people. But this woman understands her place at the moment. Jesus tells a parable for the same reason he's told all the other parables up to this point in Mark's gospel, to see who will seek him. Jesus wants to see who has faith. If this woman doesn't have faith when Jesus tells her, we're going to feed the kids first, dogs last, what's she going to do if she doesn't believe at that point? If she has no faith that Jesus can do what she thinks he can do, at that point she's going to go, well, he's not going to take care of me, and she's going to walk off. She doesn't. She goes on, she understands, and she exhibits her faith that he can still do it for her. And what does he do? Note her response to Jesus. But she replied to him, Lord, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. And Jesus says, wow, she got it. At this point, you wondered if Jesus looked at this woman and said, I wish my 12 following me would get this as good as you just did. As we're going to see going ahead a little bit further here in a minute in Mark's gospel, sometimes the 12 don't get it. This woman got it. This woman understood. The woman takes the parable and uses it to her advantage. She understands that the salvation of the Jews means blessings to the Gentiles. Genesis 12:3 reads, I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you I will curse, and all peoples on the earth will be blessed through you. Isaiah 2 and 3. In the last days, the mountain of the Lord's temple will be established as the highest of the mountains. It will be exalted above the hills, and all nations will stream to it. It doesn't say, and the people of Israel will stream to it. It says, all nations will stream to it. Micah 4:1 and 2. In the last days, the mountain of the Lord's temple will be established. This is very similar. As the highest of the mountains, it will be exalted above the hills. And Micah also says, and peoples will stream to it. Micah and Isaiah both say peoples, not just the people. Amos 9:12, so that they may possess the remnant of Edom and all the nations that bear my name, declares the Lord who will do these things. One writer wrote, but her great faith is in her assertion that the dogs do not have to wait until the children are finished. Even now they can eat the bread that falls from the table. She says, she recognized she didn't have to wait. The crumbs are going to fall during the meal. It's not during cleanup time, it's during the main meal that the dogs get the crumbs. What we have seen throughout Mark's writing is that the one is that one belongs to the kingdom not by being a Jew or not a Gentile, but rather belongs in the kingdom through faith. When you look at this woman, does she have faith? She had faith, and she didn't get discouraged by the statement that Jesus made. You know what's really cool about this after she exhibits her faith? Does Jesus say, I'm going to your place to take care of this? Or what does he tell her? He tells her it's done. He doesn't even have to go confront the demon in this case. He's cast out the demon without setting foot in her house, without seeing the demon face to face. He tells her because of her faith, it's done. That's impressive. Sometimes we need the faith of the Syrophoenician woman. Jesus is bringing an end to the clean versus unclean distinction. We talked about food. Gentiles were viewed as unclean. Jesus is saying it's people. It's sin. It's not what you eat. It's not what you do. It's in your heart, and it's in your heart for everybody. It's a heart issue for all. Everyone sins and falls short of the glory of God. Everyone has the same heart problem. And unlike in this world where we all have to go to different heart doctors, we got one heart doctor in this one. We all go to the same heart doctor to get cured of this heart ailment. Acceptability before God comes with faith in God, not in belonging as a physical Jew. You talk about something that's turning their religion of the day on its head. They had a lot of problems with this, that this is going to be open to everybody. Even those people you've looked at as dogs are going to be invited to the table. Writer said she understands that she is undeserving. She knows that she has no rightful place at the table. She falls at Jesus' feet begging for mercy. Take out some words here and look at this on this quote and just see where it applies to us. We understand that we are undeserving. We know that we have no rightful place at the table. We fall at Jesus' feet begging for mercy. The view that woman had is the view we should all have. We have no rightful place at the table. But because of his grace and mercy that is so freely granted, then we get to get it. And even if we get the scraps, that's plenty. This is the only appropriate approach to God. This writer said, we are humble sinners in need of his grace. We bring nothing to the table but our emptiness, holding on to the hope of the promise of a loving and merciful God. We are not worthy so much as to gather the crumbs from under the table, but Jesus has given us a full meal of blessing rather than the mere crumbs that we would not deserve. When you look at man's sinful nature, we don't even deserve the crumbs that are falling off the table to the dogs. But through the work of Jesus and through the blood that he shed, he says, come on and have dinner. Don't worry about the crumbs that fall off the table. Come with me and you can eat the bountiful spiritual feast. All right, we'll go on to verse 24 through 30. We'll try to get through this real quick. We've got about 6-7 minutes. As we look at Savior to the exiles. And actually, I put the wrong verses on there. Yeah, I put the wrong number. This is actually verse 31 through the end of the chapter, 31 through 37. Typoed that. Again, leaving the region of Tyre, he went by the way of Sidon to the Sea of Galilee through the region of the Decapolis. They brought to him a deaf man who had difficulty speaking and begged Jesus to lay hand on him. So he took him away from the crowd in private, and after putting his fingers in the man's ear and spitting, he touched his tongue. Looking up to heaven, he sighed deeply and said to him, Ephphatha, that is, be opened. Immediately his ears were opened, his tongue were loosened, and he began to speak clearly. He ordered them to tell no one, but the more he ordered them, the more they proclaimed it. They were extremely astonished and said, "He has done everything well. He even makes the deaf hear and the mute speak." So again, they're on the map. We've gone from over here near Tyre, and now we're over here in the area of the Decapolis. And again, we're outside of Israel. So Jesus here does not use him as a public object lesson. It was, his healing of the woman with the issue of blood became a very public thing. She touched him, and he calls out, and there's a public explanation or a public demonstration of it. Here, he takes the man aside. It's odd. Not everybody's going to get to see this. Instead, Jesus pulls him away, perhaps so he won't be overwhelmed. And remember, this man's never heard or never spoke. Can you imagine the first time you hear something? If you've ever had stopped up ear from swimming or something, when it pops, it comes back, you get to hear things loud. Imagine if you had known nothing but silence. And maybe there's a dog standing by the first time a dog barks. So maybe part of the reason is he just doesn't want him to be wigged out when he hears stuff. Maybe there's another reason. Maybe Jesus is showing that part of the relationship with him is a personal relationship and that he does this one-on-one. We're really not told. Isaiah 35, 5 and 6, though, says, "Then will the eyes of the blind be opened, the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then the lame will leap like a deer, and the mute tongue shout for joy. Water will gush forth in the wilderness and streams in the desert." Messianic prophecy, and here it happens. This man had never spoke, he now speaks. He had never heard, and now he hears. There's also maybe some underlying message here that Jesus is showing in that he is opening ears for people to hear the truth. And the parallel is he's opening ears so people can hear. This statement is key because it is the same word in the Greek translation as in Mark 7:32 for speech impediment. Verses 8 through 10 show the return from the exile has begun when these things happen. So what we're looking at here is possibly the return from man's spiritual exile to God being restored through Jesus. And the beginning of that happens when the deaf are made to hear and the mute are made to speak. People will be released from their exile and return to the Lord their God with singing and everlasting joy. They will obtain gladness and joy. Sorrow and sighing will flee away. The restoration has begun. Jesus is bringing liberation, breaking the chain that bound this man's tongue. This also fills some messianic prophecy. Fulfills some. This writer said goes on to say, Jesus again asks that no one be told. But again, those who encounter him cannot keep from talking about what happened. You ever wonder when you look at these instances why Jesus turns to them and say, don't tell nobody? Because don't you think he knows what's going to happen? And, it's one of those things you look at, I'd sort of be running telling everybody too, wouldn't you? If you had people that you cared about who had sick, that had physical issues, and you knew that there was this man that could heal them, we'd be running. If we had children who were disabled, we'd be taking them. And we'd be telling everybody they healed. Sometimes you look at that and you wonder, why is Jesus telling them? Because he knows that they're going to run and tell somebody. Verse 37, they were extremely astonished. They're like, whoa. You ever seen a magician that did something? Sleight of hand, something, you're looking at it like going, whoa. Imagine this. Deaf man, mute man, Jesus heals them. You'd be going, hey, did you hear about this? He even makes the deaf hear and the mute speak. The open ear is a symbol in the scriptures for receiving divine revelation and truth. This is why Jesus keeps saying that those who have ears need to hear and to let them hear. It's a call for spiritual perception and understanding. And this healing is a visual demonstration that Jesus is now opening the ears of those. And now we just need to hear. The difficulties and the corruption of the body symbolically represent our spiritual standing before God. Jesus is opening the ears, giving us the ears to hear the truth of what he's doing. And that's what he's doing in this time as well. And the clock says that is time, and we will pick up there in 2 weeks.